Good morning and welcome to our special online service. Today's sermon comes from my house here in Lincoln, Massachusetts because a blizzard has closed the meeting house where I serve as minister of the First Parish in Wayland. Today's sermon title is called Transforming Love. I was 12 when I first kissed someone. Not the kind of kisses my parents or grandparents or some random stranger at church would plant on me, but a real kiss. A kiss with someone who made my chest tighten and my stomach squirm. A kiss that I wanted but wasn't sure would come. A kiss that felt both entirely welcome and delightfully surprising all at once. Some years later, I found myself as a young woman listening to the story of another woman's first kiss. Weeks before I had graduated from college, an evangelical Christian school that had begun to feel intellectually and spiritually confining. In search of a bit of freedom and adventure, I volunteered at Holden Village, a Christian retreat center in the mountains of Washington State. On my first evening, I decided to attend an evening forum. While I can't remember the exact panel theme, I knew it had something to do with love, sexuality, and relationships. At 21, I was in. Walking into a full room, I made my way upstairs to a narrow balcony where I sat looking over a rail at the panelists below. One of the panelists, Allison, looked to be about my age. I listened closely as Allison began to tell her story. She talked about the awkwardness of dating as a young woman, the first dates and the first kisses, and the feeling of not quite understanding the hype about kissing and dating. Initially, Allison had been dating young men, but then she met a woman and a connection grew. When she kissed the woman, she said it was nothing like kissing the boys had been. Smiling as she searched for the words to tell her story, Allison conveyed in her sparkling eyes and long pause how powerful that first kiss was for her. Peering over the railing at Allison, my own heart shifted and my life began to change. For years I had been told to condemn the homosexual lifestyle, but I wanted to root for Allison, for her joy in kissing and feeling the electric delight of intimacy with another. Listening to Allison's story not only transformed my heart, but it also marked a turning point in my spiritual journey. I knew that I needed to find an understanding of life and religion that had space for affirming same-sex love and intimacy. In a book entitled Love by Diogenes Allen, he uses the story of the rhyme of the ancient mariner to describe his understanding of love. The story begins with the mariner in high spirits. Having made it through some bad seas, he and the rest of the crew were enjoying a good day. And then he senselessly shot an albatross whose flight had helped to guide them. After hanging the dead albatross around the mariner's neck, all the crew died from hunger and sickness, except for the mariner who lived on with the burden of the albatross around his neck. Today's reading picks up the story at this point. We find the mariner peering over the railing of the ship, watching water snakes move in the water below. Seeing the beauty in their colors and in their movement, the mariner delights in their happiness. His indifferent blindness to the value and worth of other living creatures is replaced with the ability to recognize the life of others. As he looks with delight upon the beauty and happiness of other lives, a spring of love gushed from his heart, and he blessed them unaware. According to Allen, love springs from this capacity to see and to respect the inherent worth and beauty and dignity of life, even in the life of a water snake, even in a life that seems to have no merit, no usefulness to one's own life. Indeed, it is too easy to not see people. We can walk by the homeless without meeting their eye. We can talk on our cell phone as we hand a cashier our money. We can sit at a dinner table without really asking about others. We can read a newspaper article about another violent death and calmly turn the page with little more than the shake of a head. This past week saw the violent deaths of 3 Muslim students in North Carolina: Yusar Mohammed Abu Salah, Dia Shadi Barak, and Razan Mohammed Abu Salah. While local law enforcement cite an ongoing parking dispute as a key factor in their deaths, family and friends have called their deaths a hate crime. And the federal government has opened an investigation into their deaths and possible civil rights violations. There is much we do not know about their deaths and may never know. And the motives of the suspected killer, Craig Hicks, are inevitably complicated. Yet it seems relevant to me that Hicks appears to be strongly anti-religious, posting incendiary comments about religion and religious beliefs in social media. Our congregational covenant that calls us to a search for truth and freedom and in the spirit of love takes on a very real significance in this context of religious and anti-religious violence. Our commitment to a free search for truth means that we recognize and expect that there will be religious difference and diversity in this world. Committing ourselves to respond in a spirit of love means that we will not respond to religious difference with disdain or indifference, and certainly not with violence. As a concrete expression of these commitments, last Thursday the parish committee voted to support a statement condemning such violence. The statement reads, "The First Parish in Wayland, a Unitarian Universalist congregation, extends its support to the Islamic Center of Boston and the American Muslim community of Greater Boston in condemning violence conducted under the guise of religious faith and anti-religious bigotry. We pledge to work with all faith communities to forge bonds of respect and tolerance, as well as to address issues of justice and peace in our world." Difference should not be met with hatred, nor with violence. Rather, we are called to be a people of love. We are called to a love that recognizes the otherness of a person, even if a person may be different than us, with clothing that may seem strange, or whose ways of life and religion may seem foreign. To recognize the otherness of a person is not the same thing as saying you must agree or even condone everything that a person believes or does. I certainly hope that we do not condone the actions of any person who thoughtlessly, indifferently takes the life of another, whether it be a mariner killing an albatross, a police officer killing a 12-year-old boy, or a neighbor shooting his neighbors over a parking dispute. But the recognition of otherness does mean that we see the person, that we see the life in all of its beauty, as well as in its brokenness, its pain, and even in its horror. To see another, to recognize an other in this way is to love. Failure to see is a failure to love. As Elie Wiesel has written, the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. The world is a big place with a lot of people and a lot of lives. To feel alone in seeing and recognizing all of this beauty and all of this pain would be overwhelming, which is why I think Diogenes Allen misses something important in his definition of love as the recognition of otherness. I think love might be better understood as the recognition of togetherness. Yes, to truly recognize a sense of togetherness, there must still be a recognition of otherness. We all need to recognize that more than just one's own self matters, that there is me and you and a whole plurality of people in all of their differences and diversity. But the recognition of togetherness goes farther by also recognizing the bonds between and among us, that I see you and you see me, that we are not isolated creatures swimming in our own waters, but that we are in relationships that link our lives to one another in small and global ways. Over this Valentine weekend, many people have celebrated the ways in which our lives are linked in togetherness with others. Such gifts of romantic love and first kisses are often key ways that we learn what it feels like to really see and care for someone beyond ourselves. There are also many other kinds of relationships of connection and care through which we learn to see and to love another. Through friends and family, co-workers and congregations, neighbors, and even strangers. We live within whole constellations of relationships. We live in webs of togetherness. Recognizing this togetherness can transform lives. Such clear-sighted recognition of togetherness seeks to honor the dignity of life, whether to celebrate its beauty or grieve its brokenness. We are called to be people who respond to others with an openness to hear their story, to risk being transformed by seeing another life, even in its difference, even in its strangeness. May we indeed seek to be a people who live in a spirit of love in all of its manifold expressions. So may it be. Amen.